Victor Allen was known all over the world for his wealth and intelligence. He was one of those people who could solve almost any problem with money. He ran a large company with thousands of workers. People admired him, some envied him, but very few truly knew him. Victor lived in a giant house with high walls and shiny windows. Everything inside was clean and perfect. There were beautiful paintings and soft carpets everywhere. It was a place made for comfort and luxury. His daughter Lila, only 10 years old, was the light of his life. She was always smiling. She liked to help everyone. Sometimes she would even bring cookies to the workers in the garden just because she wanted to make them happy. One night, as Victor and his wife Eleanor sat in their big living room, they heard Lila coughing upstairs. At first it sounded like a normal cold. Eleanor told her to drink some water. Victor kissed her forehead and told her to rest. But during the night her cough grew louder. Her breathing became harder every hour. Her parents checked on her, hoping she would get better by morning. But when the sun started to rise, Lila's face looked pale. Her tiny lips were turning blue. Victor rushed to call the family doctor. Singh arrived quickly in his shiny black car. He asked questions, checked Lila's heart and lungs. He looked worried. He said Lila needed to go to the hospital immediately. Victor's hand shook as he carried his daughter to his car. Eleanor cried quietly, afraid to show too much panic to Lila. But inside her heart, she felt like she was drowning at the hospital. Nurses rushed around Lila's bed. Machines beeped and lights flashed. One doctor after another came in and left. They used many medicines, but nothing helped. Victor watched the monitors, hoping something would change. His mind was racing. He tried to think of something he missed. He called experts from other countries, hoping someone would have a solution. Every minute felt like an hour. Outside the hospital room, the news started to spread. Reporters waited near the doors. Some took pictures. Some whispered and guessed what was happening. Victor's friends called to offer support, but most stayed away. The hospital became more crowded, but Victor felt completely alone. Even billionaires cannot control everything. He had never felt so helpless in his life. Day after day, Lila's health became worse. Victor was desperate. He told his team to pay any amount if a doctor could save her. He even made a public announcement. "My daughter is dying, please someone help," he begged. His voice was tired, cracked, full of pain. The whole world heard his plea. Many people offered prayers, but no one had an answer. Back at home, the Allen mansion was silent except for the sound of the clocks and the wind outside. The staff tried to help, but there was not much they could do. Some cleaned the rooms, some prepared food, but only Rosa Carter, the family's black maid, seemed to notice Lila's favorite teddy bear lying on the floor. Rosa loved Lila like her own child. She remembered every time Lila had smiled at her. She saw how Victor and Eleanor were losing hope. She wanted to do something, but she didn't know how. On the 5th night, Victor sat next to Lila in her hospital room. Eleanor's face was red with tears. Nurses moved around quietly. Outside in the hallway, Rosa waited. She was not allowed inside at first, but she came every night, carrying a bag of homemade soup and stories to tell Lila if she woke up. That night, Victor looked at Rosa and suddenly felt comfort. He remembered how Rosa could make Lila laugh even during hard times. He nodded to the nurse, letting Rosa come in. Rosa sat at Lila's bedside and whispered prayers softly. She gently wiped Lila's forehead with a cool cloth. She told simple stories, hoping to help Lila relax while Rosa spoke. Lila's breathing became less tense. For a moment, Victor thought he saw hope. The doctors were still puzzled. None of their medicine seemed to work. But Victor watched as Rosa gave her full attention to Lila. She spoke with kindness. She was not afraid. She promised not to leave Lila alone. Victor felt a warmth in his heart. He wondered if there was some power in Rosa's care that the doctors could not see. As the night turned into morning, the Allen family waited for answers. Victor, who could buy anything but health, sat in silence holding Lila's hand. Eleanor prayed for a miracle, and Rosa kept whispering stories, hoping her love would reach Lila before the day ended. That was how the crisis began. Victor Allen, once known for his strength and fortune, now stood vulnerable before the world. He had asked for help, and only one person, Rosa the maid, had stepped forward to answer with her heart. The hospital became Victor Allen's new prison. He spent every hour watching his daughter Lila struggle to breathe. Eleanor sat beside him. Holding Lila's small hand, she spoke softly. telling Lila stories about princesses and sunshine. But Lila could barely open her eyes. The machines made cold beeping sounds that reminded Victor that his daughter was still alive. But for how long Dr. Singh and his team ran every test they could think of. They checked Lila's blood, her lungs, her heart. They looked for infections, viruses, and genetic problems, but nothing made sense. Each test came back with confusing results. One doctor said it might be a rare lung disease. Another thought it was an immune problem. A third doctor suggested a virus they had never seen before. Victor felt like he was drowning in uncertainty. Back at the Allen mansion, the staff moved quietly through the empty halls. No one laughed anymore. The gardener stopped trimming the roses. The cook prepared meals that no one ate. Everyone felt the heaviness in the air. They all loved Lila. She was the child who brought joy to everyone. Now the house felt cold and lifeless without her. Rosa Carter cleaned Lila's bedroom every day, even though Lila was not there. She folded the blankets neatly and placed Lila's favorite books on the nightstand. She watered the small plant by the window that Lila had been growing. Rosa believed that Lila would come home soon. She had to believe it. Lila was like a granddaughter to her. Rosa had worked for the Allen family for 12 years. She came from a small village far away where she had been a nurse before moving to the city. Her own children were grown now, living in different places, so she poured all her love into taking care of the Allen household. Especially Lila. Lila always treated Rosa with respect. She asked about Rosa's day. She smiled when Rosa told her stories. That kind of sweetness was rare. One afternoon, Eleanor returned home briefly to collect clean clothes. She looked exhausted. Her eyes were red from crying. Her hair was tied back messily. Rosa approached her gently. "Mrs. Allen, can I help you with anything?" she asked softly. Eleanor looked at Rosa and suddenly broke down. She fell into Rosa's arms and sobbed. "They don't know what's wrong with her." "Rosa," Eleanor whispered, "the doctors have no answers. My baby is dying and no one can help her." Rosa held Eleanor tightly. She let her cry without saying anything at first. Sometimes words were not needed. After a few minutes, Rosa spoke. "I have seen many impossible things become possible. Mrs. Allen," she said quietly, "do not give up hope yet. Lila is strong, and she knows you love her." Eleanor wiped her tears and nodded. She felt a small comfort in Rosa's words. But outside the mansion, the world was watching. News reporters continued to gather outside the hospital gates. They took pictures and made up stories when they had no real information. Some said Lila had been poisoned. Others claimed it was a curse on the rich family. The rumors spread quickly. Victor's business partners called to offer sympathy, but many kept their distance. They were afraid of bad luck, afraid of association with tragedy. Even Victor's own brother stopped visiting after the second day. He sent flowers with a card that said, "Praying for you," but he did not come in person. Victor felt the sting of abandonment. He had built an empire. He had helped so many people with jobs and opportunities, but now, in his darkest hour, almost everyone disappeared. Eleanor noticed it too. She saw how the hospital hallways emptied when she walked through them. She heard the whispers of nurses who were too afraid to stay in Lila's room for long. Fear made people selfish. Even the family's closest friends sent messages instead of showing up. They said they were busy. They said they would pray. But no one sat with Victor and Eleanor in the cold waiting room. Only Rosa came to the hospital every single day. She brought homemade soup. Even though the nurses said Lila could not eat yet, she brought fresh flowers to brighten the room. She sat outside Lila's door when they would not let her inside. She prayed quietly, folding her hands and closing her eyes. She did not care if people stared at her. One evening, a young nurse saw Rosa sitting on the bench outside Lila's room. "You've been here every night," the nurse said. Surprised, "Are you family?" Rosa smiled gently. "Not by blood," she replied, "but by love, yes. She is family to me." The nurse looked at Rosa with respect. She had seen many wealthy families come through this hospital, but she rarely saw this kind of loyalty. As the days turned into a full week, Lila's condition became worse. The doctors began to lose hope. They spoke in low voices about preparing the family for the worst. Victor refused to listen. He shouted at them to keep trying. But inside his heart was breaking. He knew that all his money and all his power meant nothing now. He could not buy his daughter's life. That night, Victor sat alone in the hospital chapel. He had not prayed in years, but now he did. He asked for a miracle. He begged for mercy, and in his heart, he wondered if anyone was listening. Meanwhile, Rosa was also praying in her simple way. She asked the universe to give her the strength and wisdom to help Lila. She did not know how, but she believed there was a reason she felt so strongly about staying close to the child. Something told her that her time to help had not yet come, but it would soon. By the 8th day, the hospital room looked like a science laboratory. Wires and tubes connected Lila to several machines. Each machine monitored a different part of her body. Her heart rate appeared on one screen, her oxygen levels on another. The numbers kept changing, but they never showed improvement. Victor stared at the screens as if they held the answer to saving his daughter. But they did not. Dr. Singh called for a meeting with Victor and Eleanor. He looked tired, his white coat had wrinkles, and his eyes showed the strain of sleepless nights. Mr. and Mrs. Allen, he began carefully, we have consulted with specialists from 3 different hospitals. We have tested for over 50 different conditions, but we still cannot identify what is affecting Lila. Victor felt his chest tighten. What does that mean? He asked. His voice shaking, Dr. Singh took a deep breath. It means we are dealing with something extremely rare, something we have not seen before, or something that mimics multiple diseases at once. Eleanor covered her mouth with both hands, trying not to cry again that same afternoon. A team of international doctors joined the case through video calls. There was a lung specialist from London, an infectious disease expert from Germany, and a genetic researcher from Japan. They all studied Lila's test results. They asked questions, they debated possibilities, but after hours of discussion, they all reached the same conclusion. They did not know what was wrong with Lila. Victor felt helpless in a way he had never experienced before. He was a man who solved problems for a living. He built companies, he made deals, he controlled outcomes, but here, in this cold hospital room, he could do nothing. Money could bring the best doctors in the world to his daughter's bedside, but it could not give them the answers they needed. One doctor suggested that Lila might have an autoimmune disease where her body was attacking itself. Another thought it could be a rare form of pneumonia caused by an unknown pathogen. A third doctor believed it might be a genetic mutation that had never been documented. Each theory led to more tests, more needles, more waiting, and still, no answers came. Lila's body grew weaker each day. She stopped opening her eyes. Her breathing became so shallow that the nurses had to put her on a ventilator. The machine breathed for her, keeping her alive. Victor sat next to her bed and held her tiny hand. Please don't leave me, Lila, he whispered. Please fight a little longer. Outside the hospital, the media continued to report on the story. Headlines read, Billionaire's daughter battles mystery illness, and doctors baffled by child's condition. Some reporters interviewed medical experts who speculated about possible causes, but most of them admitted that without being directly involved in the case, they could only guess inside the mansion. Rosa continued her daily routine. She cleaned Lila's room. She kept fresh flowers by the window. She spoke to Lila's empty bed as if the child could hear her. You are strong, my sweet girl, Rosa said softly. You will come home soon, I am sure of it. Rosa did not have medical training like the fancy doctors, but she had something else. She had faith and she had experience. Years ago, back in her village, Rosa had seen children fall ill with strange sicknesses. The village did not have big hospitals or advanced machines, so the people relied on old knowledge passed down through generations. They used herbs, they used prayers, they used patience. Rosa remembered a little boy who had stopped breathing in the night. The village healer had used warm steam and special plants to open his airways. The boy survived. Rosa wondered if any of that old knowledge could help Lila now. But she said nothing. She was just a maid. Who would listen to her? One evening, Rosa overheard 2 nurses talking outside Lila's room. I don't think she will make it through the week, one nurse said quietly. The doctors are running out of options. Rosa's heart sank. She wanted to scream at them, to tell them not to give up, but she stayed silent. She walked back to the waiting area and sat down. Her hands trembled. That night, Victor made another public plea. He appeared on television, his face pale and exhausted. My daughter Lila is fighting for her life, he said, his voice breaking. The best doctors in the world cannot tell me what is wrong with her. If anyone out there has seen something like this, if anyone has any information at all, please come forward. Please help us. The video was shared millions of times on social media. People from all over the world sent messages of support. But no one had a solution. Eleanor could no longer sleep. She spent her nights pacing the hospital hallways. Sometimes she prayed. Sometimes she just cried. She felt like she was losing her mind. The uncertainty was worse than any pain she had ever felt. Not knowing if her daughter would live or die was torture. Meanwhile, Dr. Singh and his team prepared to try an experimental treatment. It was a risky option with no guarantee of success, but they had run out of standard treatments. Victor and Eleanor signed the consent forms. They had no choice. They were willing to try anything. As the nurses prepared Lila for the new treatment, Rosa sat in the chapel downstairs. She lit a candle and closed her eyes. She prayed not just with words, but with her whole heart. She asked for wisdom, she asked for guidance, and deep inside she felt a stirring. Something told her that her moment to help was coming soon. She just had to be ready. The experimental treatment failed. After 3 days of hoping and praying, Lila's condition did not improve. In fact, she seemed worse. Her small body looked even more fragile. The machines kept beeping, but the numbers told a grim story. Dr. Singh could barely look Victor in the eye anymore. He felt like he had failed by the 12th day. Whispers began to spread through the hospital. Some nurses started requesting transfers to other floors. They were afraid of catching whatever mysterious illness Lila had. One young nurse quit her job completely. She told her supervisor that she had a family to think about. She could not risk bringing an unknown disease home to her children. The hospital administration called an emergency meeting. They discussed whether to move Lila to an isolation ward. Some staff members expressed concern about their safety. "We don't even know what we're dealing with," one doctor argued. "How can we protect ourselves if we don't know what it is?" The fear was spreading faster than any disease. Victor overheard some of these conversations. His anger boiled over. "You took an oath to help people," he shouted at a group of doctors in the hallway. "My daughter is dying and you're worried about yourselves." Eleanor had to pull him away before security got involved. But Victor's outburst did not change anything. The staff remained afraid. That evening, as Victor sat alone in Lila's room, he heard a gentle knock on the door. It was Rosa. She carried a small bag with her. "Mr. Allen," she said softly, "I would like to stay with Lila tonight. If you will allow me." Victor looked at her with tired eyes. "Rosa, the nurses are afraid to be in here for more than a few minutes," he said. "Why would you want to stay?" Rosa stepped closer. Her face was calm and determined. "Because she needs someone," Rosa replied simply. "Because I love her, and because I am not afraid." Victor felt something break inside him. Here was a woman with no medical degree, no wealth, no power, offering to do what trained professionals would not do. She was willing to sit with a dying child when everyone else ran away. Eleanor entered the room just then. She had been crying again. Her eyes were red and swollen when she saw Rosa. She rushed over and hugged her tightly. "Rosa, you don't have to do this," Eleanor whispered. "We can't ask this of you." But Rosa gently patted Eleanor's back. "You are not asking," Rosa said. "I am offering." "There is a difference." Victor looked at his wife. Then at Rosa. He felt the mix of gratitude and shame. Gratitude that someone cared enough to help. Shame that it took his maid to show true courage when his wealthy friends and expensive doctors had abandoned them. He nodded slowly. "Okay," he said quietly. "Thank you." "Rosa." Rosa set down her bag and pulled out a small chair. She sat next to Lila's bed and took the child's hand in hers. "Hello, my sweet Lila," Rosa whispered. "It's Rosa. I am here now and I am not leaving you." She began to hum a soft melody, an old song from her village. The sound filled the room with unexpected warmth. Dr. Singh came in shortly after. He was surprised to see Rosa there. "Mrs. Carter," he said. "Are you sure about this?" Rosa looked at him with steady eyes. "I have never been more sure of anything in my life." "Doctor," she replied. "Doctor." Singh nodded with respect. He had seen many things in his career, but Rosa's courage stood out that night. Victor and Eleanor went home for the first time in days. They were exhausted, physically and emotionally drained, but they felt a strange sense of peace knowing Rosa was with Lila. As they drove through the dark streets, Eleanor spoke. "She is a better person than all of us," she said quietly. Victor did not argue. He knew it was true. Back at the hospital, Rosa sat under the dim lights. watching Lila's chest rise and fall with the help of the ventilator. She pulled out a small cloth from her bag. She had soaked it in warm water mixed with herbs from her garden. Nothing fancy, just simple plants she knew from her childhood. Lavender for calming, chamomile for healing. Rosa did not know if it would help, but she wanted to try something, anything. She gently wiped Lila's forehead with the cloth. "You are a fighter, little one," Rosa whispered. "Your mama and papa need you, I need you. So you must keep fighting." Rosa continued to hum her songs. She prayed in her own language. She told Lila stories about brave children who overcame impossible challenges. Hours passed. The hospital hallways grew quiet as midnight approached. A nurse peeked in once to check the monitors. She looked at Rosa with curiosity. "You've been here for 6 hours straight," the nurse said. Rosa smiled gently. "Time does not matter when you love someone," she replied. The nurse left, but she could not stop thinking about Rosa's words. She went back to her station and told the other nurses, "That woman in there has more heart than all of us combined," she said. Some of the nurses felt ashamed. They realized that fear had made them forget why they became nurses in the first place. As dawn broke, Rosa was still sitting beside Lila. She had not slept at all. Her hand never left Lila's. She watched every breath, every heartbeat on the monitor, and in her heart, she believed that love could do what medicine could not. She believed that sometimes the greatest cure was simply refusing to give up. When Victor and Eleanor returned in the morning, they found Rosa exactly where they had left her. "Did you sleep at all?" Eleanor asked. Rosa shook her head. "Sleep can wait," she said with a tired smile. "Lila cannot." Victor felt tears forming in his eyes. For the first time in days, he felt hope. Not because of science or money, but because of the unwavering dedication of one humble woman. Rosa stayed by Lila's side for 3 days and 3 nights without leaving. She ate little, she slept even less. The nurses began to notice something different about the room when Rosa was there. It felt warmer somehow, more peaceful. Even the constant beeping of the machines seemed less harsh. During the day, Rosa would gently massage Lila's small hands and feet. She had learned this technique from her grandmother back in the village. The old woman used to say that touching someone with love could help their body remember how to heal. Rosa did not know if science agreed with this, but she believed in it. At night, Rosa would brew simple teas from herbs she brought from home. She could not give them to Lila because the child was on a ventilator, but Rosa would let the steam fill the room. Chamomile for calming, thyme for breathing, ginger for strength. The nurses smelled the herbs, and some of them felt strangely comforted by the scent doctor. Singh came to check on Lila one afternoon and found Rosa wiping the child's forehead with a warm cloth. "What are you using?" he asked curiously. Rosa showed him the cloth. "Just warm water with a little lavender oil." "Doctor," she explained, "my mother used this when I was sick as a child. It helped me feel less afraid." Dr. Singh nodded slowly. He had read about aromatherapy in medical journals. It was not a cure, but it could help with stress and anxiety. Victor visited every few hours each time he came. He saw Rosa in the exact same position, sitting beside Lila, holding her hand, talking to her softly. "Rosa, you need to rest," Victor insisted one evening. "You will make yourself sick." But Rosa shook her head gently. "Mr. Allen, rest will not help your daughter," she said. "But my presence might. I cannot explain it. I just feel it." Eleanor brought Rosa meals that she barely touched. She tried to convince Rosa to take breaks, but Rosa was stubborn. "I made a promise to stay," Rosa said firmly. "And I do not break my promises." Eleanor felt tears welling up again. She hugged Rosa tightly. "You are an angel," Eleanor whispered. Rosa smiled softly. "I am just a woman who loves your daughter." On the 4th night of Rosa's vigil, something unexpected happened. One of the machines monitoring Lila's heart rate started beeping differently. A nurse rushed in, fearing something had gone wrong. But when she looked at the screen, she paused. Lila's heart rate had become more stable. It was still weak, but it was steadier than before. The nurse called Dr. Singh immediately. He came running, still wearing his coat from outside. He studied the monitors carefully, checking each reading twice. "This is interesting," he said quietly. "Her oxygen levels have improved slightly too." He looked at Rosa, who sat calmly beside Lila. "What have you been doing differently?" he asked. Rosa thought for a moment. "Nothing medical. "Doctor," she replied honestly. "I just talked to her. I tell her stories about brave children who fought through hard times. I sing old songs my mother sang to me, I pray. And I believe she will get better." Dr. Singh did not know what to say. Science could not explain how faith and love might affect healing. But he could not deny the small improvements he was seeing. Word spread through the hospital about the slight improvement. Victor and Eleanor came rushing in, hope burning in their eyes. "Is it true?" Victor asked breathlessly. "Is she getting better?" Dr. Singh chose his words carefully. "She is showing small signs of improvement," he said. "But we must be cautious, it is too early to celebrate still." Victor felt something shift inside him. For the first time in 2 weeks, he felt hope that was not based on money or medical technology. He looked at Rosa, this humble woman who had given everything to help his daughter. "Rosa," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "I don't know how to thank you." Rosa looked up at him with tired but kind eyes. "You do not need to thank me, Mr. Allen," she said softly. "Just keep believing in your daughter." That night, Dr. Singh did something unusual. He sat down with Rosa and asked her about her background. Rosa told him about her years as a village nurse, about the children she had helped with limited resources, about the old remedies passed down through generations. Dr. Singh listened carefully. He realized that Rosa had practical knowledge that medical schools often overlooked. "In my village, we did not have ventilators or fancy machines," Rosa explained. "But we had patience, we had touch, we had presence. Sometimes a sick person just needs to know they are not alone, that someone believes they will survive." Dr. Singh nodded thoughtfully. He had been taught to trust tests and treatments, but he had forgotten the simple power of human connection. Over the next 2 days, Lila's condition continued to improve gradually. It was not dramatic, it was slow and steady. Her breathing became a little easier. Her color looked slightly less pale. The doctors could not explain why the mysterious illness seemed to be loosening its grip. But everyone who entered that room could feel something special happening. Rosa continued her routine. She never claimed to be performing miracles. She simply offered what she had: love, time, presence, and ancient wisdom passed down from generations who understood that healing was not just about medicine. It was about caring for the whole person, body and spirit. The nurses began to visit more often, no longer out of duty but out of curiosity and respect. They watched Rosa work her gentle magic, and some of them remembered why they had become nurses in the first place. Not just to give medicines, but to give comfort. Not just to treat diseases, but to care for people. By the 17th day, the entire hospital was talking about Lila's slow recovery. Doctors who had given up hope now gathered outside her room, discussing what could be happening. Some believed it was simply the body's natural healing process finally kicking in. Others wondered if Rosa's constant presence had somehow affected Lila's will to survive. Dr. Singh called for another team meeting. This time he invited Rosa to join them. She felt uncomfortable sitting in a room full of educated doctors, but Dr. Singh insisted, "Rosa, we need to understand what you have been doing," he said gently. "Not because we doubt you, but because we want to learn." Rosa took a deep breath and spoke from her heart. "I have not done anything special, doctor," she explained. "I just stayed with her every moment. I talked to her like she could hear me. I touched her with kindness. I used simple herbs to make the air smell nice, and I prayed. That is all." The doctors looked at each other. Some seemed skeptical, others appeared thoughtful. One young doctor named Dr. Patel spoke up. "There is actually research about the power of human presence in healing," she said. "Studies show that patients who feel supported and loved often recover faster than those who feel alone." Dr. Singh nodded. "Perhaps we have been so focused on the disease that we forgot about the person," he admitted. Victor attended this meeting as well. He sat quietly in the corner, listening to the doctors discuss his daughter's case. When they finished talking, he stood up. "Whatever Rosa did, it worked," he said firmly. "While all of you were running tests and giving up hope, she stayed. She believed when no one else did." His words hung heavy in the air. Several doctors looked down at their notes, ashamed. Eleanor's respect for Rosa grew deeper each day. She began spending more time with Rosa, learning about her life, her struggles, her wisdom. Rosa told her about raising 3 children alone after her husband died. She talked about working multiple jobs to put her kids through school. She shared stories of helping neighbors in her community when they were sick or struggling. You have lived through so much hardship, Eleanor said one afternoon. Yet you are the kindest person I know. How do you do it? Rosa smiled softly. When you have nothing, Mrs. Allen, you learn that love is everything, she replied. Money cannot buy peace, power cannot buy joy. But kindness, that is free, and it is the most powerful thing we have. These conversations changed Eleanor. She had spent her whole life surrounded by wealth and luxury, but she had never felt the kind of inner peace that Rosa carried. Eleanor began to question what truly mattered in life. Her daughter's illness had stripped away all pretense. All that remained was raw love and desperate hope. Victor also began to change. He started visiting the hospital earlier each day, spending more time talking to Rosa than checking his phone for business updates. He asked her questions about life, about faith, about what it meant to truly care for someone. Rosa answered honestly, without trying to impress him. Mr. Allen, you are a good man, Rosa told him one evening, but you have forgotten how to see people. Victor looked confused. What do you mean, he asked. Rosa chose her words carefully. You see employees, you see investors. You see success and failure, but do you see humans? Do you see their struggles, their dreams, their fears? Victor sat in silence. Her words cut deep because they were true. One night, Lila's hand moved slightly. Rosa was holding it when she felt the tiny movement. She gasped, "Doctor, doctor," she called out. Dr. Singh rushed in. He checked Lila carefully. Her fingers had indeed moved. It was the first voluntary movement in over 2 weeks. "This is significant," Dr. Singh said, barely containing his excitement. "This means her brain is responding." Victor and Eleanor arrived minutes later. They had been at home trying to rest when they heard the news. They drove to the hospital faster than ever. Eleanor burst into tears when she saw Rosa standing beside Lila's bed. "She moved," Eleanor cried. "My baby moved." Victor wrapped his arms around his wife, both of them shaking with emotion. The next morning, Lila's eyes fluttered open for just a few seconds. She could not speak because of the ventilator, but her eyes looked around the room. When her gaze fell on Rosa, something like recognition passed through her face. Rosa leaned close and whispered, "Hello, my sweet brave girl. We have all been waiting for you." The medical team was astounded. They ran more tests immediately. The mysterious illness was still in Lila's system, but her body was clearly fighting back now. Whatever had been attacking her lungs was weakening. Dr. Singh could not explain it medically, but he could not deny the evidence in front of him. News of Lila's improvement spread beyond the hospital. Reporters who had been covering the story wanted updates. Victor decided to hold a brief press conference. He stood before cameras looking exhausted but hopeful. "My daughter is showing signs of recovery," he announced. "And I owe everything to one person, Rosa Carter, our family's maid, who refused to give up when everyone else did." The cameras turned to Rosa, who stood shyly beside Eleanor. She was not comfortable with attention, but Eleanor held her hand tightly, giving her strength. "Rosa taught us what real courage looks like," Eleanor added. "She showed us that sometimes the greatest medicine is simply refusing to abandon someone you love." That night, as Rosa finally agreed to go home and rest for a few hours, she looked back at Lila's room one more time. She whispered a prayer of gratitude. She had not saved Lila alone, but she had refused to let the child face death in loneliness. And perhaps that had made all the difference. 3 weeks had passed since Lila first fell ill, and the transformation was remarkable. She was now breathing on her own without the ventilator. Her eyes stayed open for longer periods, and she could squeeze people's hands when they spoke to her. The medical team called it a miracle. Rosa called it answered prayers. Victor and Eleanor simply called it Hope Doctor. Singh documented every step of Lila's recovery. He wanted to understand what had happened, not just for this case, but for future patients who might face similar mysterious illnesses. He interviewed Rosa extensively, asking about every detail of her care routine. "Rosa, I need you to be completely honest," he said one afternoon. "Did you give Lila anything besides what we approved?" Rosa shook her head firmly. "No, doctor. I would never risk her life like that," she explained. "I only used herbs for the steam in the air. Nothing for her to eat or drink. I just stayed with her, talked to her, touched her gently, and believed she would survive." Dr. Singh wrote everything down carefully. He was beginning to understand that healing was not just about medicine. It was also about connection, presence, and hope. The hospital staff, who had initially been afraid, now gathered around Lila's room with curiosity and respect. They wanted to learn from Rosa. One nurse asked if Rosa would teach them about the importance of patient presence. "We have become so focused on machines and medications," the nurse admitted, "that we forgot about the human touch." Rosa agreed to share her knowledge. She felt honored that trained professionals wanted to learn from her. Victor's business had suffered during these 3 weeks. He had missed important meetings. He had lost potential deals. His company's stock had dropped. But for the first time in his life, Victor did not care about any of it. He realized that all his wealth meant nothing if he lost his daughter. "I have been chasing the wrong things my entire life," he told Eleanor one evening. "I thought success was measured in money and power. But I was wrong." Eleanor nodded in agreement. She too had changed before Lila's illness. She had spent her days shopping, attending charity galas, and maintaining her social status. Now those things seemed empty and meaningless. "We have been given a second chance," Eleanor said softly. "When Lila recovers fully, I want us to live differently. I want us to be better people." News reporters continued to follow the story. But now the narrative had shifted. Instead of focusing on the tragedy of a dying billionaire's daughter, they reported on the heroism of an ordinary maid. Rosa's face appeared on television screens and newspaper front pages. People called her an angel. Some called her a saint, but Rosa remained humble. "I am just a woman who loves a child," she told one reporter. Anyone with a heart would have done the same, but that was not true, and everyone knew it. Many people had walked away from Lila when she was dying. Fear had driven them away. Only Rosa had stayed. Her courage had made all the difference. Letters poured into the hospital from around the world. People shared their own stories of illness and recovery. Many thanked Rosa for reminding them about the power of compassion. On the 21st day, Lila spoke her first words. Her voice was weak and scratchy, but everyone heard them clearly. "Rosa," she whispered, looking around the room. Rosa rushed to her side immediately, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, my sweet girl, I am here," Rosa said. Holding Lila's hand, Lila smiled weakly. "You stayed," she said softly. Rosa nodded, unable to speak through her tears. Victor and Eleanor witnessed this moment from the doorway. Both of them were crying. They watched as Lila and Rosa held each other, and they understood that their lives had been changed forever by this humble woman. "We can never repay her," Eleanor whispered to Victor. He shook his head. "No, we cannot. But we can honor her by becoming better people ourselves, Doctor." Singh called a final medical conference to discuss Lila's case. Specialists from around the world joined via video link. They all wanted to understand what had happened. Dr. Singh presented all the medical data, but he also talked about Rosa's role. "We cannot scientifically prove that Rosa's presence directly caused Lila's recovery," he admitted. "But we also cannot ignore the correlation. Something profound happened in that room." One doctor from Germany spoke up. "Perhaps we have been too focused on curing diseases and not enough on healing patients," he suggested. "Medicine treats the body, but healing involves the mind and spirit too." Many doctors in the conference nodded in agreement. Rosa's story was teaching the medical world an important lesson. That evening, Victor made an announcement to his company's board of directors. He told them he would be stepping back from daily operations to spend more time with his family. "I have learned that there are things more valuable than profit margins," he said firmly. "My daughter almost died, and I realized I barely knew her. That changes now." Some board members were shocked, but others respected his decision. Eleanor started planning how they would honor Rosa once Lila was fully recovered. She did not want to simply give Rosa money, though they would certainly do that. She wanted to create something lasting, something that would help other people. "What if we started a foundation?" Eleanor suggested to Victor. "A foundation that supports caregivers and promotes compassionate care in hospitals." Victor loved the idea. Rosa continued to visit Lila every day, even though the immediate crisis had passed. She helped with Lila's physical therapy, encouraged her to eat, and told her stories to keep her spirits up. The bond between them had become unbreakable. Lila called Rosa her guardian angel. Rosa called Lila her miracle. As the days passed, Lila grew stronger. She could sit up in bed. She could eat solid food. She could laugh at Rosa's jokes. The mysterious illness was finally releasing its grip. Doctors still did not have a complete explanation for what had caused it, or why it suddenly improved. But they documented everything carefully, hoping this case might help future patients. The turning point had come not just for Lila's health but for everyone involved. The Allen family had learned what truly mattered in life. The hospital staff had rediscovered the human side of medicine, and Rosa had shown the world that ordinary people could perform extraordinary acts of love. 6 weeks after Lila first fell ill, she was finally discharged from the hospital. The day she came home was like a celebration. The mansion that had been so cold and silent was now filled with warmth and laughter. Balloons decorated the hallways. Fresh flowers bloomed in every room. The staff lined up to welcome her home with tears of joy in their eyes. But the biggest change was not in the decorations. It was in the people themselves. Victor was no longer the cold businessman who spent all his time in meetings. He now arrived home early every evening to have dinner with his family. He listened to Lila's stories, he played games with her. He had learned that being present was more valuable than being successful. Eleanor had transformed too. She no longer filled her days with shopping and social events. Instead, she volunteered at the local hospital 3 times a week. She spent time talking to patients who had no visitors. She brought them books and flowers. She wanted to be for others what Rosa had been for her daughter. "I wasted so many years on meaningless things," Eleanor often said. "I will not waste another day." Rosa remained with the Allen family, but her role had changed completely. She was no longer just their maid. She had become part of the family. Victor insisted on giving her a generous salary increase and full benefits. He wanted to set up a trust fund for her retirement, but Rosa politely declined the trust fund. "I do not need grand gestures, Mr. Allen," she said gently. "Just treat me with respect and let me continue caring for Lila. That is enough." However, Victor and Eleanor would not let Rosa's heroism go unrecognized. They established the Rosa Carter Foundation for Compassionate Care. The foundation provided training for hospital staff on the importance of human connection and healing. It funded programs that paired lonely patients with caring volunteers. It offered scholarships for people like Rosa, who wanted to pursue careers in nursing or caregiving. The foundation's launch made national news. Rosa stood on stage beside Victor and Eleanor, looking uncomfortable with all the attention. When asked to speak, she kept her words simple. "I did what any person with a heart should do," she said to the crowd. "I stayed with a child who needed me. This is not heroism, this is humanity. We have all forgotten how to care for each other. It is time we remembered." Her words moved people across the country. Letters poured in from nurses, doctors, and caregivers who had been inspired by her story. Some hospitals started implementing Rosa's rule, which required staff to spend at least 15 minutes per shift simply talking to patients, not about medical issues but about life, family, hopes, and fears. The results were remarkable. Patients reported feeling less anxious. They healed faster, they felt more human. Dr. Singh published a detailed medical paper about Lila's case. He included information about Rosa's care methods alongside the traditional medical treatments. The paper sparked debate in medical journals around the world. Some doctors dismissed the emotional care as irrelevant to the medical outcome. Others argued that medicine had become too focused on technology and had forgotten about healing the whole person. Several medical schools invited Rosa to speak to their students. She felt nervous at first, standing before rooms full of educated young doctors, but she spoke from her heart. "You will learn many things in medical school," she told them. "You will learn about diseases and treatments and procedures. But please do not forget the most important thing. Your patients are people, not just cases. They need your knowledge, yes, but they also need your compassion." The students gave her standing ovations. Many of them later said that Rosa's talks were more valuable than any lecture they had received. One young medical student wrote to Rosa months later, saying, "You changed the way I see patients. You reminded me why I wanted to become a doctor in the first place. Thank you." Lila made a full recovery, though it took several more months of rest and rehabilitation. The mysterious illness left no permanent damage to her organs. Doctors continued to study her case, trying to understand what had attacked her body and why it suddenly retreated. They never found a complete answer, but they documented everything, hoping it might help future patients with similar conditions. Lila herself had changed. She was more serious now, more thoughtful. The experience of nearly dying had given her a different perspective on life. She no longer took anything for granted. She thanked people for small kindnesses. She noticed when others were hurting. And above all, she stayed close to Rosa. "You saved my life," Lila told Rosa one afternoon as they sat together in the garden. Rosa shook her head gently. "No, my sweet girl," she replied. "You saved mine. You reminded me why I am here. To love and to serve." The Allen household had been transformed by crisis. What started as a tragedy had become a story of hope, courage, and redemption. Victor no longer measured success by money. Eleanor no longer sought validation from social status. And Lila understood that life itself was the greatest gift. Rosa continued to live simply. She never sought fame or fortune. She returned to her quiet routines, caring for the Allen family and tending to her small garden. But she knew she had made a difference not just in one child's life, but in the hearts of everyone who heard her story years later. People would still talk about the billionaire CEO who begged for help and the humble maid who answered. They would remember that when fear drove everyone away, love kept one woman standing. They would tell this story to remind themselves that true heroism does not wear expensive clothes or hold powerful positions. True heroism wears an apron and holds a sick child's hand through the darkest night, refusing to let go. And in that truth, a household was not just changed, it was reborn.